We are entering, so Arts Mid-Hudson, which used to be Dutchess County Arts Council, is many decades old, but the folk arts program is entering its 20th year next year, of working with communities, cultural communities in the Mid-Hudson Valley, starting in Dutchess, and now we've expanded to Ulster and Orange County. And my job is to help organizations and individuals help to preserve their cultural traditions and practices, both for themselves within their own communities and for sharing out to other communities. And I do that through programming like this, where I bring in people like Donna Coane and Brad Shur. I work on festivals in the community, like Eugenia Carlisle and I work on the Hudson Valley Gospel Festival together, the Kingston Multicultural Festival, La Guelaguetza. So my job is to help organizations to present traditional culture. And arts, if you don't know Arts Mid-Hudson itself is the preeminent arts organization in the area. We are what's called a re-grant organization, in that we are given money from the state, Ulster and Dutchess counties, and we re-grant that money out to artists and organizations to help them to do performances and art shows and to further the arts in the community. We help artists out in other ways with technical assistance, how they can market their art, and things like that. We also actually have galleries where they can show and sell their artwork. We run workshops. And very exciting, this year we were finally able to hire an arts education manager, and her name is Sylvia Diaz, and I'm going to turn it over to Sylvia to talk about the arts education program.
Thank you, Elinor. Well, like Elinor said, I'm the arts education coordinator, and I was so excited and honored when Elinor asked me to be a part of this program, this workshop, not only because it feeds into something that is dear to my heart, which is educating anyone in any aspect regarding the arts, and folklore certainly is an important art, but also to be a part of this launching of this recording that hopefully we'll share en masse, not only with people here today, but also we'll have it so that people can view it at their leisure and plug it into their education, which is another something else that's warm to my heart, which is introducing arts into education, into all aspects of education. And so I'm so excited to get started, and you're all going to have a great time because we have such amazing people here to share their their talent and their artistry with you. And so I'll be monitoring the chat. If anybody wants to pose a question or a comment, just put it in the chat, and I will make sure to share it. Otherwise, please mute your microphone so that when things are being presented, there is no background noise or anything like that. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Brad Shur of Paper Heart Puppets. Brad.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brad, and I'm the founder and artistic director of Paper Heart Puppets. I've been in the Hudson Valley here for only about 3.5 years now, and I founded the company when I moved here. Before that, I was the resident artist at Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is the Northeast's oldest and most prolific puppet theater. I'm dedicated to the art form of puppetry, which is big and broad and even kind of weird. And I find that everywhere I go, even though the broad art form of puppetry has been around for as long as we've been doing almost anything else with the arts, people of all ages haven't been exposed to all of it. So I consider myself to be an ambassador for the ways in which puppetry can be part of so much that we do, which is part of why I was interested when Elinor asked me about what's something educational we could do this year. I thought, and I'll get into this a little bit more when we start talking about the work we're going to be doing, I feel that this moment, like almost every moment, has an answer in the world of puppetry. My personal practice is really broad because I love how many different things happen in puppetry. I work with giant pageant creatures, dragons that will roll over the hillside. I work with really tiny puppets. I work with video. I work with live performance. I work with kids. I'm so happy now to be working with adults. I've had the great privilege to be able to bring my work all around the country and a few times to a couple of festivals outside. Today, I'm so happy that you are all here joining us to learn a little bit about one of my favorite types of puppetry, and one that I think has such a low barrier of entry. There's so much that people can do with it that's so great. And I'm gonna, I guess, pass it on to Donna.
Well, I'll go so next I would like to introduce Donna Coane, who I know from Spirit of Thunderheart. I met her through working on the Kingston Multicultural Festival. And so Donna, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, hello there, everybody. Hi, I'm Donna Coane, and I'm the lead of Spirit of Thunderheart. We're all Native women's drum group. We are NAMI winners, 2-time NAMI winners, 3-time nomination. That is the Native American Music Awards. I'm also the producer and songwriter of Spirit of Thunderheart. I am a Native educator, and I'm also a Native artist. And I'm also a Reiki master. And here I am. I also tell stories too. I'm also a storyteller out of our culture. I am Mohawk, and I am Scantico and Mohican, and I also have some Chippewa and Cray. So anyways, that's about it.
So one practice that we've started doing within the folklore community and in other communities is to acknowledge who the land originally belonged to. And so I've asked Donna to do the land acknowledgement tonight.
So the land acknowledgement for our area here in the Mid-Hudson Valley, in the Hudson Valley, actually, if you look at across the river where I am, which is Hyde Park, you look at Wappingers, which is really Wappingers, and Poughkeepsie, which are all Native words. That is all Native territory, even going up to Red Hook and beyond. So basically, all the way down to Manhattan, all the way up to going up to Albany, it's all Native land. Then if you look across the river, you have the Esopus, which is basically Ulster County, Kingston, and all that region, even going up towards Ellenville. So basically where we are sitting right here, right now, is Wappingers territory, where I am right here. There also was Mohawk runners that were used for trade and used for communications, and that ran from all the way to Mohawk Valley, all the way down here and back. And also some Mohicans also were also in this area that ran as for trade and communication. So, which would have been original land in Connecticut. So if you imagine, runners going into our territory here, that was a big, something big that was between tribes, how tribes got along and also communicated, but also traded goods, traded goods also. So basically, as we talk, it's Esopus, it's Wappingers, and also, so that's mainly the tribes that were in our areas here.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we're going to do tonight. There's also a program that we put in the chat, although I have one shift, but I can talk about that when I get to it. So how this came about is I started thinking about that we're probably going to be in this sort of distancing situation for a while longer, and that teachers especially must be running out of ideas or things that they could do to work on with their students, especially projects in which the students can be a little more interactive. And that's when I got a hold of Brad and said, is there something we can do that can mix? I mean, we know we can mix puppets and fairy tales together. That's really obvious, but is there something we can do that the kids could do at home? I mean, literally, that's what I was thinking, is where teachers and kids could be working interactively, remotely, but also could be something that moms and dads could do with the kids. I should say children, I shouldn't use the word kids, children, that teachers could then, when they finally get to go back to the classrooms, that they could use in the classrooms. and also something that really translated that could be done on, from kindergarten to high school, that it just didn't focus on one thing, but you could do, one type of this program for younger kids and something more advanced for older students into high school and into really diving in and examining the folk tales. And as I was thinking about which folk tales we're going to present, I was a bit Eurocentric, and then I started thinking, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I've got Donna. And this is a really great opportunity, especially when the curriculum calls for talking about Native American history or culture in the curriculum. This is a perfect time to bring in local Native American tales and potentially to work with someone from the Native community who lives in the area. And so Donna is available, not just for tonight, as is Brad. So I'm a little commercial for them too. They're available, as am I, to talk with your classrooms and your classes. And it's also really important, as Donna pointed out to me, that, one of the real tragedies is that we do the land acknowledgement because there's no native land here anymore. It's all gone. And I think that's important to point out to students, but here's an opportunity to say, while there is no native land, there are native peoples who still exist in this area, who are living and working and thriving, and who can tell the stories. So while there's no land, there's still Native American life here. So I'm going to hand it over to Brad, who's going to do an overview of toy theater.
Hey, thank you so much, Elinor. And thank you again for having me. And thanks again, everybody who came out tonight to be a part of this. So I will start with a minor apology because I almost always am teaching kids. So if my way of explaining things gets a little bit into teaching kids mode, you can shut me down. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to have you guys all sing the "This Is What Toy Theater Is" song. We're going to skip that part. But we will do the grown-up version of an introduction to this. If you hear the title, if you weren't familiar with this at all, you might think toy theater is what kids do in their living rooms, is they pick up a stuffed animal and a G.I. Joe and they bring them to life. And all puppetry has its roots in picking up objects and making them live. But toy theater, more specifically, is actually a name for a kind of paper theater. I brought something, one of my favorite little possessions here. I'm not sure how many of you have some previous familiarity with what toy theater is. And again, I promised I wouldn't make you sing the song. But when I went to London, we did a lot of things that my fiance wanted to do, and we ate a lot of great food and we walked around, but there was one stop that was really high on my list other than seeing Punch and Judy, which was Pollock's, to see Pollock's Regency Theater building. Now, Pollock's is famous for these kinds of theaters. I'm not sure if anybody has seen them quite like this before. This time I will go with the way I explain it to kids, just because I'm not sure everybody's experienced with it, and I think this is a good way to break it down. So luckily we're all older folks. So if you see a movie you really love, what's something you're going to do? You're going to go onto Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, and you might watch it again the next time and share it with somebody you love. We're doing that a lot in pandemic era. In my day, we went to Blockbuster and we rented it and we did that. But if you go back about 200 years, they didn't have Netflix, they didn't even have Blockbuster, and they didn't even have movies. But when somebody saw a play that really touched them, was beautiful, and was a part of their experience, you couldn't see it again. Plays were very expensive and they didn't stick around long, and they had their sort of primitive 19th century VHS, which was the toy theater. So instead of bringing home the video version of a movie, or not a movie, a play you saw, and seeing it again and again, one thing that you could do is you could buy one of these books. And one of these books would have everything you needed to watch your version of the story again in your own home. So a lot of people at this stage, printing was becoming more and more widespread and more accessible for things other than sort of very expensive objects. So this was a little bit of a souvenir in that some people would have their own, upper middle class people or wealthy people might have their own sort of very elaborate wooden stages, but other people would construct a paper theater just by cutting out all the parts in this book, and they would fill it with the paper scenery, and they would cut out the paper characters. And just focus this. They would cut out the paper characters and manipulate these to retell whatever stories they'd seen. This one is actually Sleeping Beauty. And when you open it up, it comes with instructions and the floor of the theater and all the lovely parts of it. Now, when Elinor mentioned to me, we were talking about something that worked on all ages and something that educators could do. I'd already been doing a lot of work with kids over Zoom since the pandemic started. To begin with, I became a regular at a Montessori school based in Massachusetts. So I'd work with a few times, and I normally don't get a chance to go out there often, but because we're digital, it's not as much of a drive. And I noticed, well, we're doing all this interaction just through Zoom, and we have this sort of stage. And something that occurred to me was like, paper theater is such a great medium for this moment because paper theater is something that you can make inexpensively. It's something you can make quickly. It's something that doesn't require a whole lot of technical skills or specialized tools. And one of the things that I love is that the Zoom structure, the video square, is its own stage. If you're into puppets, you might know this is one of the things that Jim Henson actually really pioneered. Before Jim Henson came on the scene with puppets, if you saw puppets on TV, and anyone here ever see Kukla, Fran, and Ollie? Yay! All right, we got some people who go back. Howdy Doody, maybe going back Howdy Doody?
Yep.
All right. So traditionally, when puppets appeared on television way back, so puppets on screen, they would use them the same way that you might use puppets in live performance. Kukla, Fran, and Ollie was a hand puppet show, and when they appeared, there was a hand puppet booth. And one of the things that Jim Henson decided is like, wait a second, we don't need a special booth. This rectangle of the video is its own hand puppet stage. And so if you watch the Muppets, you'll see they don't appear in like a special little stage. They walk around like people. And this is something that we're all experiencing right now. So the Zoom screen that we all see is not just the video, it can be our puppet stage. And that's a way to think about the way we interact with it. So to create toy theater, all you need is flat characters. Here's just actually a really simple one I used for an example a while back. And there's a lot of ways you can start to manipulate these. We're going to go over a couple of the possibilities when we talk about the stories and how they come to life. But once you've got sort of a cutout figure that you can make in whatever media you're personally comfortable with, that's already a toy theater puppet. You don't need to have foam or fleece or very expensive things. And you can manipulate it in a whole bunch of ways. Just really quickly off the bat, I don't need to have any sort of particular tools for this. Once I hold on to this, this can become a character. I'm going to refocus again. Let's see right there. This becomes a character that's framed in the puppet stage, just like that. And as long as my hand is out of screen, my character can walk across. My character can peek in. Let me just get it right. My character can live in this world of a puppet stage that we create right there. Now, if you want to get a little bit off from the direct form of that, we can just add a really simple manipulation. This is one of my favorite things in the world. I'm going to refocus back here. I do a lot of puppet and papercraft and a lot of stuff with kids. And a couple of the things that I always keep on hand are these bamboo skewers. You get these at any grocery store for about $2. And if I just take a little bit of tape, it becomes my control for my toy theater character. So instead of manipulating it directly by having my hands on it, I put a little tape on this, and depending on where I put this stick, I can manipulate it in different ways. I can control it from the top, just like that. And my character walks along just like this. I can control it from the side. Actually, traditional toy theater puppets tended to be performed from the side like this because the stages had open sides, and that allowed all the puppets to slide around. Or I can control it from below, like most puppets you see on television, by putting that stick right there, and that gives me something to grab onto to move it around. Now, you don't need to be any kind of artist whatsoever, or even know how to draw to put stuff together. Here's one I made. This, I don't know if you all recognize this guy right here. This is a postcard I got trying to get me to switch my car insurance. And I created this toy theater paper puppet that's manipulated from below. I added one stick that goes taped right up here and goes right down there. And I added another stick on its arm right here. So this character automatically becomes somebody who can interact. And I can't do the Geico voice. Who can interact with my students, who my students can have and interact with you. And this only took a couple pieces of paper, an advertising postcard, and some of my bamboo skewers. The other secret is these brass fasteners. And I'll show you in one of the specific stories a little bit more how specifically I get those to work. But by doing that, I've got this robust character who's living in the stage, who's on video and happy to be there. And it didn't take anything sort of very specific or mind-blowing. It's just a shape cut out of this paper, and it automatically becomes this character. And for this one, I'm using actually a little extra special thing. I've got a little bit of this insulation foam that I taped down to my table. And because I've got that and I'm using my bamboo skewers, all I have to do is seat the skewer into the piece of foam, and it stays still. I can have as many characters going as I want right there. That's actually one I took from Balinese traditional shadow puppetry. They would use an old rotting log underneath their shadow puppets and jam them in to keep them in place. So we're going to get back when we start talking about some of these specific folk tales to how this technique and how this method of working with puppets can apply to bringing these folk tales to life. And that's something that can be used for you as an educator or a storyteller working with the kids that you work with, or that's something that the kids themselves can approach as an art form, as a way for them to tell the stories that they experience through folklore or that they're experiencing in their lives or want to share for whatever other reason. So I'm actually going to send it back to Elinor to sort of give a little bit of the background of folklore that we're going to be working with today.
Hey, thank you, Brad. Hopefully I can share screen, or if you could enable sharing screen.
You should be able to share screen.
Nope, it says host disabled screen sharing.
Let me see, it should be active.
If
there
you
we
click
go.
on the share screen feature, it should give you an option to share with anybody.
All right, should be set now.
And if you want to check and see if there's anyone in the waiting room right now, while I'm sharing.
I will. I don't see anybody, but I've been checking in, but I don't. But I will.
So let's see. Oh, this never quite works for does it? Let me see. Let's try this. Hold on. So can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this will be a very brief overview. So what is folklore? If we were doing a more interactive, I would have you kind of guess, except for Marilyn, who's a folklorist, so I won't make her. So there are many, many, many descriptions and definitions of folklore. We joke among ourselves, among folklorists, that we each have our own definition, and sometimes they compete with each other. But I decided to take these two quotes from the American Folklore Society And that because I really liked the idea of cultural DNA, that folklore is that stuff that we pass down from one to another, is, you know, through families, through cultural groups, through occupations, through religious groups, through any sort of group that we find ourselves belonging to. You know, folklore gets passed down. So people might ask, what's the, you know, what isn't folklore? So I've always liked this sort of description. If you're a fan of opera and your favorite opera is the Magic Flute, going to see the Magic Flute is not folklore. But if you belong to a group of people who travel together around the country to see the Magic Flute wherever it's performed, there's chances are that you have formed some rituals, some ways of doing things, how you would meet new people. So that would be considered folklore, a folk group. Or another example would be, for those of you who remember the Grateful Dead, there was the Grateful Dead, and then there were Deadheads who followed the Grateful Dead around the country and actually splintered into littler groups and had their own rituals and things like that. So we can think of all sorts of different ways that people gather together in groups. But we recognize that the most important tends to be the family passing traditions from one to another. This time of year is a perfect example of that, as we hand down traditions of Diwali, of Christmas, of Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year celebrations. So those are really good examples of, you know, we first encounter folklore within our families, and then it sort of moves out from there. The other thing I like to remind people is that everyone has folklore. In other forms of art, you may just not be interested in music, or you may not be interested in theater or in modern art or impressionist art. But folklore is something that every human being shares. We share it amongst ourselves. We can share it within our own groups. We can share it between groups. So it's something that we all can connect with one another on. And it's also important to note, a lot of people think folklore is something in the past. While there's a huge historical component to folklore, because we do look back and see, you know, how far back things come down from our family. You know, if we're talking about something in the family, like for instance, in my family, there is a ring that gets passed, has been passed. We're in our 5th generation now. It's passed from woman to woman when she gets pregnant. So when a member of the family, whether they're a blood relative or married to the family, when they announce that they're pregnant, then the ring is passed on to them and kept, and they get to keep it until the next woman in the family gets pregnant. We joke that because I've never had children, I'm not even allowed to try it on. But my aunt's dog was a breeding dog, so actually she's worn it. But so we sort of joke about that. But it's that sort of thing, that things get passed down from generation to generation, and that's sort of also how we identify tradition. It's something that happens more than once, and we like to see it happening intergenerationally. And so it lives and breathes today. So it could be like the ring in our family. It could be a food tradition. And food traditions get changed as people move across geographies, because they might not be able to get the same ingredients. Again, an example from my family is we make blintzes, and can no longer cheese blintzes, and we can no longer get the dry cottage cheese. So we've had to switch to regular cottage cheese and draining it. It doesn't, it's been so long, I can't remember the difference in taste. It might change the taste and texture, but it doesn't change the tradition of handing it down from family to family. Folklore comes in many forms: written, oral, material culture like food, or even like actually puppet theater, because we're using physical objects. It can be customary, talking about our traditions of Christmas and of births and deaths. But that's way too much to get into tonight. If you're interested, just let me know and I'm happy to do another Zoom. Tonight, we're going to focus more on folktales. And for this, I asked my colleagues in folklore to provide definitions. And so the first one comes from Peggy Bulger, who is retired, but used to run the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. And the other is from Ricky Saltzman, who is a folklorist out in the state of Oregon. And they sort of feed off of each other. Folk tales, as Peggy says, are cautionary tales with a universal message about good and evil. And then Ricky expands on it by talking about, sort of taking that good and evil, or those oppositions a little further. They talk about needs and desires and what we want and what we wish we could have. Some tales are tales that show us what happens when people act poorly, or what happens when people act in a good way, in a certain way, so they get what they deserve in a good way, or they get what they deserve because they've acted poorly. And I like these definitions because I think they bridge cultures where some other definitions tend to be more Eurocentric. Some of you may be familiar with Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey. And I was originally going to talk about that, which sort of shows the path of how folktales happen. But again, I don't really think they work well internationally or globally. I think that explanation works fine in Europe, but I'm not sure it works fine in other cultures and places. So this is why I decided to go this way. Folk tales, some people call them fairy tales. Also, you can put into the classification myths and legends. And I don't want to keep much longer than this. So I did develop a resource page. So I'm going to post this. I'm going to send this to those of you who I have emails for. If you want to put your email in the chat, if you don't think I have your email, I will happily send this to you. These are some really good sources for folklore and for folk tales. I've especially used the Native American one quite a bit when I was working on another project, but these are ways to get to some really good folk tales and will take you beyond just the European set of tales. And so that is it for this part. So the next thing is we want to talk about Little Red Riding Hood is the first story we're going to get. Is there anyone who doesn't know the story of Little Red Riding Hood? If you want to either say it in the chat, or if you don't know the tale of Little Red Riding Hood, go ahead and give us the crying emoji. But we decided on Little Red Riding Hood.
We don't have any crying emojis so far.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sylvia. So we decided to go with a European tale and a Native American tale to sort of give you the broader view. And we chose Little Red Riding Hood partly because Brad said he was really excited about showing the characters of Little Red Riding Hood, and far be it from me to take away his joy. And that made it, when people are passionate about a particular tale or something, I want to go with it. So as just the briefest overview, we all know Little Red Riding Hood is sent out from her parents' house into the woods to go to her grandmother's, take her grandmother some food, and she encounters a wolf who threatens to eat her and then threatens to eat her grandmother, and follows her to her grandmother's house, where indeed he eats grandma and disguises himself in order to eat Little Red Riding Hood. Now, interesting, in some tales, she is rescued by a woodsman, and in some versions, she rescues herself. So right there, there's another interesting thing you can bring up with your students, is that the tales have different versions to them. We know that Cinderella does, we know that Little Red Riding Hood does, we know a lot of them do. Some of them because they were told in different places, and then and as they dispersed out, they made some cultural changes. We also know that a lot of tales that were developed in Germany, if you ever want to go back and read like some of the original Grimm's tales that were translated directly from the German, they're really violent and really dark. You know, Hansel and Gretel is a lot darker than we think it is, and even Little Red Riding Hood. And so the changes were made for a quote unquote American or a non-German audience, where telling, you know, terrifying tales to children was just not something that was done culturally. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Brad, who's going to talk more about not just toy theater overall, but he's going to show us Little Red Riding Hood.
Sorry, I was muted. Hey, and now I'm not. Thank you so much, Elinor, and thank you for that introduction to folklore in general and to this folk tale. So I'm glad everybody has heard the story of Little Red Riding Hood. It's a great classic one. Elinor was totally right that when she mentioned different stories we could do, I heard Little Red. I said, "Ooh, that one." Partly because one of it is there's a big bad wolf, and I like wolves as characters. I think humans can only be so interesting. Once you get into animals, you can get some really interesting characters. So I wanted to try a couple different approaches when we created puppets for the stories that we were going to be using tonight. Now, I did just go into a lot of how you don't necessarily need traditional staging to show this kind of puppet, to show paper puppets, and that there's a lot of exciting possibilities, that we're in this world of the video screen is the stage, but stages are still fun, and stages are still lovely and traditional, and they have a whole history to them. So if you looked at the Pollock's Toy Theater book that I saw, that was a kind of toy theater meant to be in sort of this lovely, very particular ornate stage. But I've got a really simple version of that I wanted to share with you. This is one that I use as a practice. I made mine out of wood just to be as sturdy as possible. And let me see, I might need to add a little more light there. So this is one that I built just out of a little bit of plywood, really. That's a wooden frame, and it's got all the components necessary for toy theater, and especially for toy theater that you can share through Zoom. Of course, right now it's very, very plain. You can see got wood all around it. These can be decorated or left blank as much as you want. And this one I built out of wood, like I said, because I want it to be very sturdy. But this exact really simple design is something that you or kids can make at home out of pretty much any cardboard box. We've got what we call the Proscenium Arch, which is this area here, the piece that's in the front that outlines the play area, which is right here through the window. We've got a backboard, which allows you to hang scenery to create a setting for anything that you want to show. And then we've just got a broad flat area in between here. And you can do a lot of fun stuff with that, depending on the kinds of puppets that you want to put in here. But this sort of setup is really great for puppets. Well, obviously it's not great for puppets that you want to perform from below because we've got our floor here. But it's great for that very traditional feel of toy theater. So I've actually, I've put together our little forest off the path scene. And, you know, I can mention, this is something that I don't think I said quite enough, but while there is a particular aesthetic to the 19th century traditional sort of Pollock's toy theater, paper theater does not necessitate any particular aesthetic or approach or materials other than that they're all flat. Like you saw, I made one out of a Geico postcard. So whether you like to draw, you don't, you're a painter, you're a collage artist, anything that you can put together that's flat is fair game for creating your characters. Now, if you hadn't noticed, behind me is my little wall of cardstock. My company is Paper Heart Puppets. Paper is one of my favorite materials, and I love cut paper collage and cut cardstock collage as a medium. So I was able to sort of really quickly create this sort of simple backdrop, and I did the same thing with the characters. So these ones are, again, the sort of traditional overhead style. Here's my little red. And you can see that she, just like I mentioned before, she's got this rod operating her from above. And the front side is the pretty side. If you look on the back, you see all the tape and little attachments and fun stuff. And she's mostly a very simple puppet. All that Little Red has to do in a lot of the story is walk. She's going through the woods. She's going to her grandmother's house. She doesn't need to physically do or pick up a lot of things. So a very simple character with this rod from the top is all that you need to tell that sort of story. So I could start off a story here and say, once upon a time, there was a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was given a basket of pizza and muffins and Alka-Seltzer to bring to her grandmother, who was very sick, and she had to go through the forest to get there. Mom said I had to stay on the path, but I don't know. The forest looks kind of interesting. And you can keep going with the story exactly the way you want. I also made another little sort of example puppet to show in these core scenes. I made a wolf. And the wolf I decided to make just a tiny little bit more elaborate than my Little Red. I gave my wolf a moving part because I wanted my wolf to be able to be nice and menacing and to have a little shift here. And I'll show you exactly how I put that together. This wolf, unlike Little Red, the wolf has two rods. So if you look on the back, I used all my simple favorite materials made out of this cardstock. My controls are these bamboo skewers. Again, 100 of them for $2 at a grocery store. And then I put it together with my little brass fasteners. And you can get these at most office supply stores, or you can order your own online. And I put them together in a couple pieces. The whole body and upper torso is one piece. Then my neck is a piece, my head is a piece, and my arm is connected to the back of the neck. And that gives us this sort of really lovely mechanism that I enjoy quite a bit. So now by pulling up on this rod, I can move both the wolf's head and his arm and sort of get a very active character that really only has 2 points of control. And by isolating just a little bit, I can turn the head, I can have him look up, I can have him look down, and I can have him move his arm with his head or keep his arm in place and just move his head just by the attention that I put on these two rods. It's a really simple mech, but it gives a lot of action. And I'll be honest, I've made this story before for Toy Theater. I did not make my wolf quite so creepy when I was doing this for kids. I gave myself a little license. I wanted to make a scarier wolf. You can make yours a little bit more friendly, a little bit more cartoony, or if you're working with older kids, you can make your wolf as scary as you want if you're doing this story or other stories. The lovely thing is you can specify it a lot by the audience that you want to work with. Now, with my Little Red, I didn't show you quite everything. She is a pretty simple puppet, but there's nothing going on. One thing that I gave her as a puppet is I gave her what we like to call a kinetic feature. These legs here have the brass fasteners, just like we have on the moving parts on the wolf. Now, I don't have a stick to move those around. So what I did was I taped, I like to use a little bit of this double-sided foam tape as a really quick way to put things on, but you can use glue tape, whatever you've got. Put a few washers at the bottom, and I made sure that my connections here with the brass fasteners were loose. And what that does is it makes her legs, again, what we call kinetic. It means they've got a little bit of motion on their own. And you can add that to pretty much anything on a puppet that, well, you generally want it on something that dangles. So you could put it on an arm, on a leg, anything that wants to bounce around. And that allows you to have a character who moves a little bit, again, what we call kinetically. I did this one quickly. So because of the way it is, my shoe gets caught in my washer. There we go, that fixes it. So that makes your character look more alive with the way they move. This character can now sort of bop around. It can sort of keep its feet on the ground and get an angle going. And you can create a little bit more life to something that you only need to have one hand to control in a really simple way like this. So I can have my iconic scene where Little Red meets the big bad wolf. Now, right now I've got these two rods in one hand because one of the things of puppetry as a single practitioner is you've only got the two hands. So I can't make my wolf do everything he can do while I've got both puppets on at the same time, but I can bring these two characters together just like that. Now, if you're telling the whole story of Little Red Riding Hood, I only wanted to give you a little bit of a taste. One of the lovely things about this toy theater, as opposed to actual full space person theater, is my backgrounds are pretty much this size, which is pretty small. Now, I only prepared just for today this one of our forest scene, but because it's this small, because it can be made out of paper instead of something that needs to be person size, all you have to do to change your location is just create another paper scene and slot it right into place. This one's a little bit bigger than standard 8.5 by 11, so one by itself. Your theater could be that size. For this one, I'd need to tack together something just a little bit bigger to do a scenery change, but we can go from Little Red in the forest to Little Red and her grandmother's house. I could even just cut out a grandmother's house and put it right there, to the inside of grandmother's house, to, if we wanted to be really funky and take a chance, we could have a big pink background that is the inside of our wolf's stomach, where Grandma and Little Red scheme on how to get out. Or like Elinor said, if you do the version where the woodcutter saves them, the woodcutter comes and saves them that way. So this way is that very traditional way. Using this theater is great because, again, we've got our very simple backdrops, we've got our lovely simple ways of manipulating it, and it has sort of a wonderful old school feel, framing it in this theater in this way. And by the way, I just want to keep saying, if at any point I'm talking too fast or you're interested in how something is done or have a particular question about how to use anything, feel free to pop it up, your question in the chat. We'll also have a little bit of time at the end to take anything. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say for now about this approach to Little Red. I'm going to put this aside and I'm going to toss it back to Elinor for the next part of the program.
Did you have a video you wanted to show?
Oh, you know, I realized I put that in the wrong part. The video that I'd switched to was more of a general toy theater approach one than a Little Red specific one. So if you don't mind, I might hold off on that one and show that towards the end of the program. Is that okay?
That's okay. So this leads us to a segue into introducing Donna, who is going to, who's going to tell a Native American tale, and then Brad is going to break that down as well. But let's just take a quick moment. Does anybody have questions that they want to ask at this point? Oh, looks like we're fine.
There's nothing in the chat field yet.
Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Donna, who is going to tell a Native American tale.
Well, there's
Okay,
something here for Brad. Sorry, Donna, 1 second. To Brad, thanks for the breakdown and explanation. I didn't realize the process.
Oh, well,
Marilyn
thanks,
said.
Marilyn. And again, I hope I wasn't talking fast in a way that made it seem really complex, because it's not. You can put that stuff together very simply, and you can make your particular puppets as complex or as simple as they need to be. So I hope I didn't put it in a way that made it seem too complicated.
Thank you, Brad. That was very nice. That was very educating me on, you know, something totally different.
Yeah.
It was really neat.
Thanks so much, Donna.
Yeah, you're welcome. So as the story goes, this is a story of a Mohawk, it's a Mohawk story, and it starts out into the spirit world, what we would call the spirit world or the afterlife. But in the spirit world, there was this village of people that lived, and they function just as we function here. They have, you know, their village, they have their sharing, they have their games, they have their, you know, celebrations, and they also have their food. And so long ago, there was this left-handed and right-handed brother. The left-handed brother was a brother of that was very competitive. No matter what he did, he was very competitive and always had to be the one ahead and always just very competitive. And the right-handed brother was a brother that was very humble. He was caring, he was sharing, he was not competitive at all. And so every year around this time, which would be fall, right now we're still in our fall until winter finally comes in December and later on this month. And they would have this big feast that they'd have to get ready for. And so in this feast, the main meal of this feast was always bear, because bear is hardy and the meat lasts for a long, long time. And the hide can be used to keep warm. And then there was medicinals of the bear also, the bear's grease. So there was all these things about the bear that could be used, but not just for the feast, but for other uses. And so the two brothers would agree that they would go out and they would go and hunt down this bear together. But the left-handed brother always had to make it into a competition. But also the village thought that whoever brought back the bear would be the honored one, would be the one that would be the most important hunter of the year. And that was an important position to be in, an important acknowledgement also of these hunters. And so the left-handed brother and the right-handed brother, they went off to hunt and to get this bear. Well, of course, the left-handed brother, being so impatient and being so competitive, every time he pulled back on that bow to hit that bear, he would either miss or not do a very good shot, because he really wasn't thinking very well about the accuracy to get that bear, or the vision to get that bear. But the right-handed brother was very, very good at what he did, and how he worked with that bow, and how he concentrated with a good mind and a good heart to get this bear, and the accuracy that he put into getting this bear. And so the right-handed brother pulled back that bow and he hit the bear. And then the left-handed brother, he said, oh, I could get this bear just as good as you can, just as well. He pulled back, an arrow went right over the bear's head, totally misses the bear. That's because the left-handed brother is very confused. He's in a hurry. He doesn't have the patience or the accuracy, because he doesn't have the patience, because he's just so competitive. So the right-handed brother pulls back on the bow and he hits the bear. And the bear starts to ease this fat. This fat starts to drift down. And as it's drifting down in the trees below, he realizes that I'm getting the bear. I'm doing pretty good. This is a good sign. So the left-handed brother goes, well, I can do better. I can do better than you, my brother. So he pulls back the arrow and he misses the bear. The arrow goes in between the bear's legs and the arrow keeps going. Right-handed brother, now he has to start running after this bear because the bear's starting to get away. So he finally catches up to the bear and he pulls back the arrow again and he lets go of the arrow, and the arrow hits the bear again. And then again, this fat oozes down and the leaves turn orange from the fat. The leaves are now orange. And then the left-handed brother hits and misses again. Right-handed brother hits again. And he hits the bear again and nails the bear right near the heart there. And then all of a sudden, the bear starts to bleed red. And the red starts to hit all these leaves. The leaves start to turn this beautiful red color. And so again, the left-handed brother goes to goes to get the bear again, and again, he misses the bear. But again, the left-handed brother says, I can get it. I can do it. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win over the people's honor. And he pulls back on the arrow, and it does hit the bear, but it doesn't go deep enough. And so the right-handed brother goes and does a final pull on the arrow. He releases it, and the bear goes down. And then as he looked down, all the leaves fell off the trees. And this is how winter came to be, how we went from fall to winter. When the leaves turn orange, we know that the people are almost ready to be fed up in the spirit world for that meal. And then they turn red, and they know that it's even closer. And then all of a sudden the leaves fall. And when the leaves fall, they have their meal in the spirit world. And so this is basically a story that's told to all ages and adults. You can shape it however you want. You don't have to use the bow and arrow. You can use it as any kind of story that you like to incorporate to change the outcome of the arrow hitting the bear, or or of the death of the bear even. But this is how it's told in our culture, and this is how fall became winter. And so now when we look up in the sky, we see that bear in the sky, and it reminds us of the bear that was the feast for the spirit world. And so that is kind of the moral of the story of honoring the bear in the spirit world. And so within the story also, another thing that you could also do with the children too is use a story bag and pull out like maybe a bear, or pull out something that would represent a person, or make it your own story by using a story bag and pulling out different props out of that story bag is another way of telling a story also. But again, you can shape the story any way you want as far as the bear story, but basically that would be the way we would tell the story. And so that's the story of the bear in the spirit world with the left-handed brother and a right-handed brother.
Thank you, Donna. And I guess you could also talk about the right-handed brother and the left-handed brother, and good versus bad as well. So there's lots of ways to look at the story. And now Brad is going to break it down for us in toy theater.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Donna. I love that story. And actually, I looked it up a little bit, and I found a few different versions of that. And I love how, just as Elinor was saying for Little Red, so many of these stories are told by different groups and told in different ways, and they all have their own sort of very particular folk tradition of it that I enjoy so much. So I thought about this story and how somebody might choose to use this as a representation. And one of the things that I do as an artist is I look at what are the interesting moments? And when we talked about Little Red Riding Hood, when I think of a key moment as well, it's Little Red walking through the forest. Obviously, you can't tell the story without that. And I think for this, some of the things that I loved are the arrow flying through the air. And I loved, I think in your version just now, you didn't tell, but I love the idea of the brothers tracking the bear. Some of the versions they have them following the bear's tracks and finding him. And I love this idea that, of course, this had to be an impressive bear because, they're working so hard. And so I thought about things like scale. So I did mention before that you can use a framing device like a stage like we use, or you can use the screen itself as your stage. And for this one, I wanted to use that sort of more Zoom era approach. So I thought about some of the key moments. So we have two brothers, and I wanted to make them sort of small in size, and I hope their clothing is all right. I tried to do a little research, but I didn't find quite the resources I wanted to. And I made these just like I was mentioning with one of these skewers on each of them. So in my particular setup, I've just got taped down one of these foam rolls. So like I mentioned, we've only got two hands if I'm just one puppeteer. And this story's got at least 3 characters. So it's a big problem solving moment. How do I have 3 characters and 2 hands? Because nothing I do is going to give me more than 2 hands. So One thing you want to think about as well, how can I put these characters down? So I've got my little foam insulation piece right here, just the stuff you can buy at most hardware stores for $2, or you can just save some of the insulation that comes if you've ever bought a big TV or a piece of electronics. It normally comes packed with squishy foam that you can use like that. And I leave the pointy ends of my skewers down so that my left-handed brother and my right-handed brother can both be right here, and that I can have them on stage at the same time and tell my story about my two brothers hunting the bear. Now, for the bear, I wanted to create a sense of scale, and I could make that, because paper is cheap, I could make it as big as it wants to be, but I can also use the fact that we're on camera now. So I don't know, has everybody here seen Lord of the Rings? The films, anybody seen Lord of the Rings? Okay, one thing you might not know about Lord of the Rings is that the actors who played the hobbits were not actually tiny people. It's true, but it also wasn't CGI. It was not always a high-tech technique that they used to make them look small. They used something called forced perspective, where the depth of things in the shot of the camera, because the camera flattens it all into a flat picture, the camera doesn't really know how far back something is. So if something is closer to the camera in just the right way, it will look to the viewers like it's larger. And that's how they made Gandalf look bigger than the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. And that's how you can make your bear look a lot bigger than your hunting brothers. Now this puppet is actually about this size, so it's a little bit bigger, and it's big enough to be intimidating, but the closer I bring my puppet to my camera, the more difference of scale I can create, and I can create this very impressive bear with these hunters, so I can tell the story that the two brothers were hunting for the bear. And they noticed in the dirt the tracks of the bear. Yeah. Oh, wrong way. Again, I just made the puppets. I haven't practiced this that much. They noticed the tracks of the bear. Aha. This looks like a bear. Now, other moments that I wanted to create to help tell this story, really important moments, just like I mentioned, we had our arrow going. And that's something that works really well and really easily in toy theater. I just made my arrow. I stiffened it a little bit with one of my bamboo skewers. You could use cardboard or whatever you've got handy, so that I love that I can make my right-handed brother, let's fly his bow. Ah, I will get the bear. And the arrow flew. And I can decide what I want to do with that. I can be as gory as I want if I want to be really explicit. Or I can be as poetic as I want and have it move sort of poetically through. It can happen tastefully off stage if that's what you like to do. It's up to you. It's a theatrical choice. You can be as literal or as poetic as you want. And the crux of the story is this sort of moment where the leaves change, and that becomes this magical moment of communication between the spirit world and the real world that people really see. That's the sort of just so part of it. And one of the lovely things about paper is that even though it's flat, paper is also two-sided. So we can have our leaves here. I know in Donna's version, the fat changed them to yellow, which actually is 3 transformations that you can't do quite as easily with the flip. I might have needed an extra prop for that. But in some versions, I've heard the slightly simplified version. It's just the blood that turns them blood red, and then they fall. And you are reminded of the spirit bear and our 1, 2 hunter brothers. Where did my other brother go? Oh, he fell. Yeah, there he is. Our 1, 2 hunter brothers in the spirit world, hunting the bear, which tells us it is winter. So again, I didn't tell every little bit of the story there because Donna told it so beautifully, and there's no one way to tell this with toy theater. This was just one example of some things that you could do and some ways that you could approach bringing that to life. Of course, your own version is going to be your own awesome version that works with your own strengths. Do you like to tell a story as a storyteller? Do you like to be the voices of the characters? Do you like to narrate it as a poem? Do you like to show and not tell? As simple or as complex as your background in acting, in voices, in that, you don't have to be an expert in any of those to do something really compelling, just because this toy theater gives you this realm of the visual, which is so simple to make. It's just anything flat creates these really simple effects, which can tell your story. So we're going to move a little bit on into the homework assignment. I had one thing that I'd wanted to show earlier, and Elinor, I hope it's all right now, just to sort of expand on the couple examples I've shown with the breadth of what you can do with toy theater. I actually want to show you one more example before I go. Toy theater is traditionally quite small, but not necessarily. So you can do whatever you're comfortable with scale. This is one of the larger toy theater puppets I've ever made that's actually inspired by other kinds of puppets. I do a lot of work with cardboard. I really love cardboard dearly. So I've got this one where it comes in 2 pieces. And this one's strapped to my wrist with a little Velcro that I hot glued to the back of the cardboard to make a little cuff here. And then my head makes another piece. And you can use the same principles that we've been using to manipulate small characters to do something that can be quite large, and that you can really do a very robust screen filling performance with. And again, this is not made out of any very expensive materials that require any expensive tools to put together. This is cardboard and black paper from old boxes. You've got the stuff to make a puppet just like this in your garage. And you can do something very robust without spending a lot of money and without needing any special skills. But so I wanted to show one great example. Like I said, I'm really into the breadth of puppetry. I'm really into like how big and how different things you can do. We've seen a little bit of what happens traditionally. I actually picked, there's a piece that a friend of mine does. Her company is called Puppet Kebab, and she's got a piece called Dirty Gertz. That uses, I think, some of these techniques of paper theater in such a broad way that I find it really inspiring. I think this video that I want to share is from a performance of this, a version of this that she did at Symphony Space in New York. I think that's where it was taped. Let me see if I can pull this up. So this is Sarah Frechette, her company Puppet Kebab, and the piece is Dirty Gertz. And you're going to see how she takes this paper theater concept and she uses it in some ways that are a little closer to the traditional, in some ways that just sort of explode what can be done with this really accessible and affordable medium. Can everybody hear okay?
Dirty Gertz is a paper pop-up extravaganza. A groovy blend of historical fiction, 60s pop culture, and colorful confetti. Come on, get happy with middle schooler Carol Lee Bell, as she finds the best way to fit in is to not actually fit at all.
So that was just one little example that I love. I love the way Sarah takes some of these paper concepts and blows them up to sort of how sort of wacky and big and inventive you can get with them. And now I guess it's up to you. So Elinor, I apologize, I can't remember. Would you like me to give the assignment for next week, or should I throw it back to you for that?
You can go ahead and give the assignment for next week, or not next week. It's
Not next
January
week.
11th.
January 11th. So thank you everybody who was able to come out and join us. Thank you for being here. We we wanted to be able to support you who were able to attend in working a little bit on your own instantiation of paper theater to bring folklore and folk tales to life. So what we'd like to do is give you the assignment to pick your own folk tale. You can look at some of the great resources that Elinor has provided. You can work with one that you're familiar with or one that you find elsewhere, and start to take some of the steps to create the physical pieces and the movement and the decisions that you want to make to bring it to life as a performance. This could be something you can do with the library students you work with the students you work with. This is something that you can do as an example to sort of inspire students that you work with to create their own versions. But we'd love you to try to tackle this approach to puppetry and come back on January 11th. And we're going to be here again so that you can share your work as you've started it, and we can talk about how you can make that the strongest project that it can be. So before I hand it back, does anybody have any questions about some of the stuff that I've just been discussing or the assignment or any of that?
No one's chimed in yet, but obviously feel free to reach out to Brad and Elinor if afterwards you think of questions, or to Donna, think of questions afterwards. We are available to answer them at any point.
I just want to say, watching Puppet Gods use her fingers, that's something great as well, is to, to make finger puppets and use them that way, because that sort of gives you extra fingers and hands to do that with. I also want to say, I don't want to just limit it to the people who are here tonight, but if you want to share it, because it was a small group, so if you'd like to share this, we'll share the video with you. And if you want to share it out, then those people are also welcome to do the assignment and join us as well on January 11th. And so that we can, this is a hard time of year and people are really sort of zoned out from a lot of Zooms. So maybe after the Christmas season, when people are a little more relaxed, they might like to join us. So please feel free to share this out with everyone. And if you could all put your email in, actually, Marilyn, I have yours. Melissa, I don't think I have, I do have your email. So I'll make sure and share it with you, as we'll share the recording, and I'll also share the PowerPoint with you as well, so that you can have the resources. So any questions, any comments, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask them out loud if you want.
Marilyn wrote, thank you both and Elinor. Interesting discussion. I learned a few things, though I'm not sure I'll be diligent and make puppets. If I do, I will let Elinor know.
Yeah. Or we can also use that time if people want to ask more questions about folk tales and other ways that you can, other things that you can use, or so we'll have a good time.
Yeah, and of course, and Brad reminded me that yes, of course, people don't have to actually have do the assignment to come next session. Feel free to come and join us, with or without an assignment ready.
Right.
Of course, and you don't need to make any sort of elaborate puppets. If you want to cut a couple people out of your favorite magazine and cast them as the characters, that takes 2 seconds. You can get them ready to go. You do not have to be elaborate or technical in your approach.
Right.
Which is why we chose this forum to talk about, because we really wanted to, one of the things that I think is really important, especially in these times of COVID, is that we don't want mom and dad to feel like they have to run out and buy anything. A, we don't want them running out, and B, it harkens back to those times when you had to make your own fun. And when Brad mentioned the idea of bringing G.I. Joe and a stuffed animal together, it really took me back to my childhood and the elaborate hours-long stories my friends and I would come up with like 10 stuffed animals, and it really took me back to my childhood. A little teary-eyed here. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to contact me and I can pass them on to Brad and Donna. And also if you want to, Sylvia is going to be doing more arts education Zooms, I think, in the future and work. So please get in touch. I can put you in touch with Sylvia so you can be a part of that as well. Please also, I guess, join the Arts Mid-Hudson Facebook page, which will keep you apprised of everything that's going on with art. So,
and of course, if you
you.
want to be, if you want to become a member, feel free to become a member of Arts Mid-Hudson as well, if you're not. And Marilyn, and by the way, I love Kukla, Fran, and Ollie.
I remember Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. Although I was actually part of the first Sesame Street generation.
Cool.
As Sylvia mentioned, there are lovely benefits of being a member of Arts Mid-Hudson, whether you're an artist or not, including some nice discounts. But if you're an artist, we do have at least one art show a year that is for members. And it gives you also the opportunity to teach workshops and gives you discounts on attending workshops and things like that. And you support the arts in the Mid-Hudson Valley. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Brad, I'll go ahead and save the chat, which I think I can save the chat.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll record that. I'm gonna stop the official recording, and I'll we'll talk soon about ways to pass that along.
Now I'll start recording it. And oh, we lost Donna, but she'll be back. So I actually had these. So a couple of years ago, I did puppet festivals and puppet festival workshops around the Hudson Valley, and these were puppets that I used that the kids and adults made then, and they come from the Ramayana, which is one of the two major folk tales in India. There are many folk tales, but this and the one I can never pronounce, the Bhagavad is the other one. But the Ramayana happens to be a favorite of mine. And it's the story of Rama and his wife Sita, and it's about love and jealousy and betrayal and strength and honor. I mean, like everything. You know, there's war and there's peace and there's kings and all sorts of things going on. So I made 3 of the characters. This is Rama. Oh, I think I have to go back. This is Rama.
Oh, very cool.
And this is his wife Sita. And you'll notice she's looking one way, but her feet are going the other way, which I noticed is, which is how it came. You know, I didn't create. I just colored and cut them out. We downloaded these templates, and this is how the templates came. So I have no idea why that happened. And then this is Ravana, who is the many-headed demon king.
Oh, that's great.
I am missing another major character, which is Hanuman the monkey, and Lakshma, who is Rama's brother, who helps him out. So the basic story is that Rama is supposed to be king, but when his father dies, but his father has 4 wives, and one of the wives is so jealous and doesn't want Rama to be king. She convinces her husband, partly because he owes her a favor. And the favor she calls in is that you can't make Rama king. You have to exile him. And so she exiles him, and Sita follows him into the forest. This is a very truncated version of a 400-page story. Follows him into exile, and ultimately Sita is kidnapped by Ravana because he loves her, he desires her. And Rama, of course, rescues her, but the problem is he doesn't trust that she was not defiled by Ravana. And so that creates further problems. but
Of course.
it's just one of my favorite. I don't know why it is, but there's many characters, and it's just so lush. So and these I did as stick figures. So yeah, I'm not sure how I would have created a background. I would have had to like create it the entire background of my apartment.
Well, you know, on that note, and that's something that we can talk about for our audience, but and yes, Elinor, those were awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Those are great. So one of the projects that I did sort of early in the pandemic, I was working with the school that I've been doing a lot of work with in Worcester, Massachusetts. And they came to me and very much at the last minute, they're like, listen, what we normally do at the end of the year is we bring all the kids on, we do a big play about everything they learned, and we can't do that. So we wanted to do some puppet work with all the kids about the things that they'd worked on through the year. And with the youngest group, what we decided to do was a toy theater performance of Paul Revere. And I wish I had my little object there, but we used some very, very simple flat 2-stick Paul Revere on his horse puppets. And we got to the part of like, well, we broke up the poem so that the horse was riding in lots of places. And I said, well, you know, not everyone is going to have the resources or the desire or the wherewithal to do a huge painted backdrop that reads well on Zoom. So the challenge we gave them is, well, where can this horse be? And all the kids actually were fabulous. This is the lower elementary. So these were, I think, 1st through 3rd graders. And they found in their homes and their spaces every solution. So some of them decided to do it actually outdoors and found like a little patch of area outdoors, which looked beautiful as a great backdrop for their horse. And they did their little segment of the midnight ride of Paul Revere with their horse running through the trees or the road or whatever they had behind them. Some of them found, you know, a section of wall and a lamp that they could make into a tree with a piece of cardboard. So one of the great things about doing this on Zoom is that we're back to the days of us being kids doing living room theater and finding those creative solutions. You don't necessarily have to have your perfect Indian mural. You can like look around your house and see, oh, well, you've got some great wood paneling. Maybe if you clear off a space of wood paneling, put up, you know, piece of textile to make a sort of curtain fringe at the top, then you've got a really lovely sort of weighty feeling space for these dramas to play out.
That's a good idea. I do have lots of wood paneling. It's entirely wood paneling.
That must have been so adorable, Brad. I can just imagine what it looked like.
Yeah, no. It came out great, and I was I'm still working with some students from that school. Some of them are in person and masked, and we've got a small group we're still teaching online. So it's great to work with those kids because they're very creative in their solutions. We're doing shadow puppets with them right now. But yeah, that whole idea. So this is, you know, something that comes up, and, you know, Melissa and all of us with time, we don't have crazy amounts of time right now. And one of the reasons I love paper theater is that you don't need the most elaborate, expensive, time-consuming things to make it do some really interesting stuff. So before we get much deeper, there's a couple things that I thought we could talk about in this session. I think, you know, ideally, we were talking about if people did have some time to put some things together, we could talk through their process and what were their stumbling blocks and what were their challenges and how we can make them the best. I don't think any of us predicted how exhausting the last few weeks would be.
Right.
This was news, but I want to ask Melissa as our sort of participant who was here last time. Melissa, if this is something that you want to play with at some point, the big thing I think we didn't get to talk about last time is performance and performance technique. But I'm wondering if you have any questions along those lines or any other particular questions that we didn't get to address last time.
Well, I got to say first, this talk inspired me so much. 2 of my story times I did as a craft. I made a marionette just out of sticks and toilet paper rolls that the kids just loved. And then one night I made just an accordion, made an accordion dragon for we all had, because we're all separate, just stuff that they could make at home, and the kids had so much fun. So thank you guys so much. This really like helped me like think of ideas, and I just see the kids just seem so happy making it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Along those lines, I can't remember if we pushed it last time or if we talked about it. I've got a YouTube channel, and everything I've got on there, I've got 6 different projects that are all designed to be done with materials everybody's going to have at home.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
I'm definitely going to check that out. My youngest daughter walked in while you were speaking last time, and like made me go to some of your YouTube things, because she was like, "Oh, he was so funny," and wanted to hear more from you. So we'll go to that, the thing you were just mentioning. So
yeah, if you've already got my YouTube channel, it's Paper Heart Puppets on YouTube. It's not / Paper Heart Puppets, because you got to get more viewers to get that name. But if you look us up on YouTube or Facebook, you'll find it. And we've done a bunch of instructional videos, and you're very welcome to use those with your storytime groups, or you can watch it yourself and use that as the impetus to lead a puppet craft, because and they're all different approaches to puppets.
Thank you.
But was there anything else, if we're going to spend sort of a moment this evening going over some stuff, anything that would be useful to you in your practice?
I mean, now I usually work with maybe younger kids than like 3 and 4-year-olds, and in person, but right now it's been a little bit older online. Is there, for doing projects with kids in person, is there material that you recommend using or not? Like, is there, or different stories to take with the fairy tales or not, or any?
Sure. So, and I'll tell you, 3s and 4s are actually not my sweet spot. People assume that's a puppeteer.
A lot of touching involved with puppets.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my colleagues love the toddlers, and for me, it's first grade where it starts to be the kids I can really work with in an educational setting. I did forever a residency. I did 4 years in a particular school, doing kindergartens every year, and it ate away at my soul a little bit. So I have so much respect for everybody who can work with the youngest. For me, working with slightly older kids, with I guess more of the kids I teach are in elementary. So sorry, just to be clear, you're asking more about how to work with the older kids, or what to do when you're going back to the younger kids?
I guess either. What now?
Yeah.
Virtually older kids, and then younger kids in person. Is there anything that you recommend?
Sure. I mean, so for toy theater, you mentioned a little bit about materials. What I've been trying to do, and you probably found this a lot right now, is the easiest thing to make sure people don't show up for your activity or aren't ready to participate is to ask for something that they don't already have in their house. So I really like now, while I'm teaching workshops with kids online, to really dive deep into the recycling bin. And you're probably doing a lot of the same, I'm guessing. So for toy theater, I think one of the best materials for toy theater, I normally like to use actually a lot of cardstock. I've got my sort of whole wall of cardstock. That's my favorite thing, but not every kid has that available. If you do have people who are ready to spend money and be ready with it, cardstock is great, or even Bristol board if you want something a little bit more robust. But most of my activities, a lot of my activities these days are based around, like I said, stuff from their recycling bin. So this is like the next best thing you can get is cereal boxes are really nice and stiff. They've got some body to them. They can create a structure, but at the same time, they're going to have them around. And if they don't have cereal boxes, they might have shoe boxes or snack cake boxes or something with
Amazon boxes.
Of what?
Amazon boxes.
Well, I'll tell you, I I don't structure a lot of projects around Amazon boxes. And this is something maybe, Melissa, you found, is that younger elementary kids and younger kids don't have the hand strength to cut corrugated cardboard very robustly.
Definitely.
That's true.
They've got the materials, but they definitely need parental help for that. And that's been frustrating for me. If that's something you want to work with and you've got like a regular group, there's actually a really lovely, let me see if I have one of these. Oh, there's a $7 corrugated plastic knife that is the master of cardboard cutting, but not cutting your hand, that I love to recommend. But again, that's a specialized tool that, you know, when you're doing, you know, drop-in sessions, you can't expect kids to have. But for in-person projects, having a bunch of these around is fabulous. This particular brand, what's this brand? This is a Canary, but there's a few brands that make it. So these are great because normally scissors is gonna, if they want to do anything more robust than a couple tiny cuts, for young elementary kids, scissors are gonna just bust them up. And a knife that's normally capable of cutting cardboard is capable of cutting children. So these guys are a godsend if you really do want to do a cardboard project, and they go through like butter. So here, if I just want to go right across a piece of cardboard, it goes through in 2 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't go through a child. Because it's just plastic with really, really fine serrations, and you'd have to work at it to cut off your finger with it. But more specifically, you talked a little bit about materials and stories. Again, I recommend highly all the videos that I made are around multiple ages. So they are good for the young and the old. I found, I have to say, unfortunately, I myself don't have a lot for the 3s and 4s unless their parents are there helping them. Just because the motor skills are, for me, at such a stage that they can't do the stuff that is my specialty in teaching them. They can stick a thing to a thing. But when they do have parents with them, they can do a lot of those same activities with just a little bit of help. One thing that I do that you should check out, I do the paper mouth workshop, and I think I don't have any of them. This one's a little battered because it was I think this was in the trash from a workshop I gave last week. But I do these guys, and you'll see that in my videos. When I have younger kids in person, I make the blanks and I let them put the faces on and decorate. And that tends to be within their wheelhouse. And for when I've got kids who are too young to even cut, I just fill up bins with shapes, with circles and squares and triangles and rectangles, and let them sort of use those as the basis for putting on their faces. And that's been our go-to festival activity. So they can do it as like a drop-in when we've got, you know, an outdoor whatever, you know, several hundred people going by. We set up the bins, we set up as many blanks as we can build, and they file through with that. But for older kids, you can get into doing more robust things from start to finish. I think even especially now, a toy theater workshop with older kids is great. What I concentrate on, because I think they're simple puppets, one of the things is if you keep them simple without a moving part, they don't need any special supplies, and they can create them and start putting together a performance and putting together an action with them in the time that, you know, kids' attention span for a Zoom workshop is limited. So this is great in that you can do both making and starting to get them perform together in the same sit down. Whereas with anything more robust, they make a pretty thing, but they don't know what to do with it necessarily, or they don't have time to start using it. Do those sort of answer some of those questions?
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No. Anything more particular along those lines that came up?
No, I think that's it for now. I'm sure I'll have questions in a bit, but that's great. Thank you so much.
So yeah, let me see. I think I wanted to talk just really briefly about sort of performance with these puppets 101. So when I've been working with kids, and we actually we worked with similar ones just a month back or so. One of the more important things that you can do is when they've got these kinds of puppets, they immediately want to, which can be fun. But I love that I'm, what I love about what I do is I'm not just babysitting them, I'm teaching them theater, and I'm teaching them how to do things that are compelling and that they can take pride in. So I love starting with some of the very basics of performance. And, those come down to this, if you're holding a puppet, I talk about the difference between play and performance. So if I'm playing, then I'm the direction of it. So if I'm playing, and these are my G.I. Joes, and, and I think we talked about that very briefly, maybe at the beginning of last session. Oh, I'm G.I. Joe, I'm going to get you. And I know they don't do G.I. Joes anymore. I don't know what's popular right now. I'm a little out of it. But whatever it is, it's very self-directed. That's how the play goes. So the very first thing is to show them, as yourself a performer, and to teach them about being audience directed. And that starts off very literally. It's, oh, these are to me, you can see my back. I want to make sure that I'm very conscious of what the audience's view is. Is my puppet facing the audience? Is my puppet facing away from the audience? Is my puppet facing in a way that looks awkward to the audience? So if I just, put a really simple face on this guy right there, this is a character. Am I going like this? Well, my character disappears. Am I going like this? You're seeing the back of the character. Am I going like this? You're seeing my hand. If I'm right here, then I have a character in a slightly different way. And my audience can experience what that character does. It's an audience-centric, audience-focused effect. So that's number one on the list. And going down from there, again, depending on the age group, if you're teaching this, you can use these words. But if not, you want to think about it as your own principle of what you're doing. The word is isolation, and it's the next most important thing. Because if I'm telling a story from the Ramayana, and I'm Rama and Sita, and I say, Sita, come away with me. Well, let me ask you a question right now. Sita, come away with me. Which one of these puppets is Sita? Anybody can answer.
No.
You have no idea. And you have a slightly better idea if you're using the lovely images that Elinor used. But the principle of isolation in puppetry is really, really simple. Especially when you're using puppets that don't have moving mouths, but it's an idea of where the focus goes of the audience. And that isolation means, to start with, the simplest version is when a puppet is talking, engaging, it moves. When a puppet is passive and not the center of attention, it doesn't move. So if I have these two characters here, I'm just going to put a quick face on this guy. Oh. And I did the thing where I jiggled the cable again, every time. Let's go back. There we go. If I've got two characters here, Sita, you must come back with me. No, I will never come back with you. Suddenly that isolation tells you who's who, and it tells you who's active and who's passive, and that allows the audience to know who the characters are. So just this really, really simple idea of a character is not speaking, it is still. A character is speaking, it moves. This character is now speaking. Now this character is speaking. And you can tell which character is speaking at any one time. Yes, at any one time. Just by that really, really simple division between stillness and movement. And it's the simplest thing. This actually goes for all kinds of puppetry, whether you're working with these very simple ones, whether you're working with glove puppets, that simple language makes the scene so much clearer. So that's for you as a performer or you as a teacher. Again, that's an idea that kids want to be a little bit older. You need a little bit more time to get into for performance, but it gives such a difference to their ability to show something that makes sense and your ability to show something that they can read as an audience. And then taking that up one little step from there, you might start with, once you get the hang of that and you know who's moving and who's not moving, there's often a big temptation to headbang out everything. And you know, I can show you this way. It's the same principle no matter what kind of puppet you work with, but I'm gonna, just for the principle of making it a little more interesting, I can use my glove puppets here. Ooh. Put that down. So even though these are more robust characters and you can probably tell a little bit about who's who regardless of what I say, you're still going to work with the same principle. When this character is talking, you're going to have this character move and it becomes very clear who is speaking, even though this mouth here does not move at all. And then when this character is speaking, it's very clear because this character is isolating and maybe doing a certain amount of reacting, but you can tell who's in action because that's who's moving. Now, what I was just getting to is one of the things that's really tempting, no matter what kind of puppet you're using, whether you're doing more robust glove puppets like this, or if you're doing simple paper puppets, the first instinct when you're having a puppet talk or communicate might be to do the little headbang. And hello, I'm a puppet. Or with one of these guys, tends to look a little bit more like this. Ooh, takes a moment to get them on. Hello, I am a puppet. And if you've seen bad puppetry, if you've seen caricatures of bad puppetry, that's a lot of times what you see is they just go up and they sort of bash out the fact that they're speaking. And that's a beginning stage and that's something that you work through. But one of the great things to think about, and this is a really early framing device for me and something that really helped me get along with this, is to think of puppets as mimes. And they're not literally mimes because, well, they speak, they're talking. But what mimes do, and something that you can see if you watch mimes or clowns, people who do that kind of physical performance art, is they speak with their body. And that's what puppets really want to do, is use their actions to sort of communicate the thought and idea instead of just sort of beating out the fact that they're speaking. So like I wouldn't walk down the street and, you know, I see you all and I say, oh, hello, let's talk about puppets. That would be kind of odd and I would get a headache really quickly. So when you're working with this puppet, one of the things you want to start doing is think about the idea behind the words, and think about what that idea communicates and find your motion that, you know, you want it to move so that your audience knows who's talking, but instead of just empty movement, instead of just headbanging the words, see if you can find ways that their movement shows their idea. So this is a glove puppet. Again, this can do a little bit more. This can do like, oh, hello. It's so good to see all of you. See, the character looks active. It looks alive. You can tell this character is talking, but each of those actions, hello, it's good to see all of you. Those motions were in a language, a body language that shows a little bit of what that character is doing. And that looks so much more dynamic than, hello, it's so good to see all of you. And I know you might be thinking, well, that's great for a puppet like this, but I can't do that with paper. And you can't do everything you can do the same with paper, but you can do just a little bit the same. So think about the small things that you have control of, even with a simple puppet like this. So with a simple puppet like this, what can you do? Well, I can turn my angle a little bit. I don't want to turn my angle too much or I get invisible. I can go up and down. I can tilt along any of these axes. And when you find those actions, you can find a little bit of this body language, even in something so simple. And if you're working with one that's a little bit more complex, like Elinor's that has a little rod on the arm, you do have a little bit more freedom. So this kind of puppet might pop up and be like, oh, hello, it's so nice to meet all of you. And that was just the sort of flat paper version of what I had my slightly more robust puppet doing. I was just finding little gestures that carried the sort of emotion and the meaning of what those words are. And I know that's a little advanced if you're teaching the kids to do it, but if you want to do your own story time, if you want to use your own sort of puppets to start telling that story, this will give you a little bit of the tools that you need to do that. So I know we're a small group, and I know we've got some full plates. I didn't want to bog us down and take up all the time we initially had planned, since we had, like I said, a very small group. So I just wanted to check in and see if there's anything else anybody wanted to go over.
I can't think of anything. Melissa, do you have any more questions? Or Donna?
Not really. I guess on my end, I actually experimented a while back, and I did contact a few people, but they didn't show up. They're not here. So that's not helpful.
Oh no.
I know, but anyways, we did like do a little thing with my storytelling end of it, and we actually added kind of like puppets, you could say. But it was fun, and I did invite them here, but they are not here. So I don't know why, but anyways, there were teachers that I know. One teacher is actually in Florida, and she was very interested, but she's not here, so I don't know why. But anyways, hopefully next time I can pull them in, because I would like them to also meet you too, you know, also. So that would be nice. But it was fun though. We did do the bear story, and we had fun. And then I also incorporated another story just for fun, and it worked just as well as a bear story. But it was, you know, it was interesting, because I'm not real puppet, you know, in tuned per se, but we were actually able to make shift and actually do something. And you know, and the one teacher is actually a teacher I've known for a long time, and she's getting ready to retire in a couple of years. But you know, so anyways, I was hoping she would come, because I wanted her to meet you. So hopefully next time.
Yeah, hopefully. You know, I was thinking, I can't remember if I mentioned it before. I don't know if you're aware, Heather Henson, who's Jim Henson's daughter, is very involved in Native American culture these days.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually did a show pre-COVID called Ajijek on Turtle Island, where she worked with a lot of Native American artists to create these images and this sort of very larger than life thing. She also works with kite.
Yeah.
Oh, did you get to see some of that?
No, actually no. One thing that I was hoping to incorporate was corn husk, but of course not everybody has corn husk. So
Yeah.
you know, I have corn husk dolls here that actually tell a whole story of that is basically the creation story on the turtle's back. Another idea is you know, using corn husk, and but we ended up using like basically paper strips, because they didn't have corn husk available. So, you know, I mean, I did, but they didn't.
Right.
You
Well,
know.
I mean, potentially for corn husk, it wouldn't be that hard in a sense to find, because tamales are wrapped up in corn husk. So if they went to a bodega or
Yeah,
one
they
of the
can.
they, you know, if they knew ahead of time,
they
there's
can
things they
find
needed
corn
to get.
husk easy enough.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, corn husk. Any Mexican store has corn husk.
Right.
You can buy it at any Mexican store, and sometimes the grocery store has it too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think it would
We've
be
always got to
cool.
move it around.
I think one thing that would be cool in terms of toy theater is that if you were telling a tale, you know, like a Native American tale that was about corn, or about that in which corn husk would really work, or even something funky, like if you're telling a story, you know, about potatoes, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, normally I have a
some of
story
those
about
tools.
the corn husk, which is a corn husk style story. And in the story, you know, it talks about the corn husk woman being brought to life by Creator, and she has this thing that she has to do where she has to go from village to village to tell stories, play games, and sing songs. And through the story, she does that through the villages, and the children stop crying and get happier again, because the parents didn't have time to spend with them because they're too busy hunting or fishing, or you know, for tools and food and clothing and shelter and all that, you know, to build shelters and all that. And so they didn't have time to spend with the children. But through the time of her telling the stories, playing the games, and singing the songs, the kids became happy again. But then she realized that she was so beautiful, and she started to look at her reflection in the river more and more and more. And in doing this, the Creator took away her beauty. So it basically teaches our children to be responsible and not be vain, you know. But it's actually corn husk dolls that is used to tell the story, basically. And it's a Haudenosaunee story. It's passed down by our elders, you know.
Mhm.
And the moral of the story, like I said, is to teach the children not to be vain. That's the moral of the story, basically. And that's why our corn husk dolls don't have faces.
Oh, wow.
But it's very easy. Yeah, and the corn husk dolls are Haudenosaunee. A lot of people think, excuse me, that it's something through colonial times, but it is not. It's actually Haudenosaunee. It's a Iroquoian doll, and they never have faces on them. And the dolls go from small to large to fancy, and like I have pieces here that I've showed into museums years ago, and the one piece is actually it's in my office, but I can't really show you because it's like in a big huge protective thing. But it's actually a longhouse that's made all of corn, and it has exactly what would be in a longhouse inside that corn longhouse. And then there's you know, the there's a corn husk male and a corn husk woman. The one woman has a baby, and the other woman has a rattle, and she is a singer. And then there's also the creation story where the woman falls through this sky world, and she lands on a turtle's back. So that tells that whole story of also the left-handed and the right-handed brother that's born. So that's all part of like a storytelling theme that was put in that museum show long ago. But there's a lot you can do with corn husks, though, and it's pretty fun. So
I love it. And from an object theater perspective, I know a lot of people who do different versions of, you know, they start with a newspaper out and then they roll it up and it becomes something. And I think you could do the same thing with corn husk. This sort of moment of corn husk becoming a character could be really magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking,
yeah, definitely.
You could do some of the same,
You know,
like Japanese tales and origami.
We use corn husk to. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My husband does origami, and he does a lot with them, with it, including like years ago. Actually, I came up with the idea for my mother's one of my mother's birthdays. We gave her money, but it was money for a trip that she wanted to take. And so we made like a suitcase, an airplane, and, you know, a necklace for her to wear and a ring. And it was cute, but it was all done from money, origami,
Right,
you know.
right.
But there's a lot you can do in origami, though, and
Yeah, but
especially
also-
storytelling. And that's how we
Right,
do
yeah.
the storytelling, basically.
Yeah, I love to find ways to, if you're telling a tale from a particular culture, is there a way to think about, you know, another craft from that culture that would somehow fit with puppetry, you know, especially with toy theater, that really opens it up to, you know, to so many possibilities that,
Yeah.
you know, if you're doing
Yeah.
German tales, you could have backgrounds of Schnär and Schnitte, which is German paper cutting. There's also Witzianki, which is Polish paper cutting, you know, so there's multiple things that, you know, could be used to sort of round out the tales and give them sort of a glimpse into the culture. So thank you, Donna. Those are great suggestions.
Yeah.
Anything else, Melissa?
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't want to. No, this is such a good conversation. So I'm loving hearing everybody's thoughts and different perspectives. So thank you guys so much.
And you work you're the librarian, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So feel free to contact any of us.
Thank you.
Brad Shur at Paper Heart Puppets. Donna, do you want to put your email in the chat for her?
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
And you know where to find me. And which library are you with?
I'm at the Plattekill Library.
Right. Okay.
And I'm the children's librarian there. Hi, honey. Oh, thank you. Can I see you? Yeah, you can see.
We can hear her.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to work. I couldn't. Wasn't able to share my screen. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna.
You're welcome. I had to make sure I could see. I can barely see it, so I'm like squinting to put it in there.
Right.
Well, I think I got it right though. I put my phone number in there because I'm transitioning into a new computer. Hopefully, this computer is on its way out. It has like this black. The pixels are going, so you all have like a black band going across you. So anyway, yeah, it's crazy. I usually plug it into a monitor, but the monitor doesn't have a camera, so
oh my.
I'm just being black.
I'll give you a minute or two to copy down Donna's information, and if you don't have any more questions, and if everybody else feels like they've imparted the knowledge that they are ready to impart tonight, then we can go off and do other things. I want to say thank you so much, Melissa, for joining us and being our stalwart. And thank you to Donna and Brad for doing this project with me. I was so excited. And more people will see it. I promise you. I will put it out on. I'll edit it together and put it out on YouTube and Facebook, and even though they weren't here, they'll still get to experience it. And I look forward to finding some more opportunities for the three of us to work together. And
yeah, that would be really fun. Thank you so much for organizing this.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem. No problem. You know, just everyone is so zoomed out. Donna, we will certainly be in touch soon in terms of the Multicultural Festival.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
So I'm sure we'll start meetings again soon. I don't think a decision has been made about live or not so live yet, but you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It doesn't look too promising for again this year.
No, it doesn't.
Things are going.
Yeah, it absolutely doesn't. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. I know where to find you. So have a good evening.
All right. Thanks so much.
You too. You too. No, thank you all. Have a good night.
And I'll send you the recordings when I'm done with them.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.